Welcome, Denise Donoghue. Hey, the mortgage nerd. She's here. I love it. Denise and I became friends just recently. I can't believe just recently after all these years, right?
That's
A
crazy.
lot of like heard about each other, through different circles and everything, especially through Mortgage Coach and through your sister Deb, who I've known longer than that. And we finally got to meet. I've known Deb for a few years and just a lot of interaction on Mortgage Coach. And then one day she said, "Hey, do you want to be on our podcast? Is it the Nerd and the Bird? Is that what it is?"
Yes.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
so the Nerd and the Bird. So they had a podcast. I happened to be in Dallas early December, and the event that I was literally next door to Denise's office. So I came over, we did a podcast, and we just chatted the whole time. And she looked at me, she's like, "How have we never met?" Because we are almost 100% on the same page with
Yeah.
everything that we follow, everything that we believe. And for those of you that have, those of you that are in coaching, you guys know that we believe in a very modern approach to the mortgage industry. And modern isn't always technology. Modern is also marketing versus sales. Because traditionally over the years, this has been a sales industry and helping everybody build their marketing foundation, marketing funnels, and databasing and everything else. And that's exactly how Denise has built her business. I know in 2021, which was a big year, you did over 700 units. I think that was about 250 million. But you had a big last year too, in times when people had no business. I think you were north of 600 units last year.
Yep. North of 600. I think we were at 612 for 202 million.
202 million. And this is not like her branch of all these loan officers that she's counting together. This is Denise's personal production, which she self-generates herself. That's her main job. And actually here's a question that I always ask people is, Denise, like, how do you identify as a business person? No, I'm not asking you for your pronouns or anything like that. But like, how do you identify? Like when you think of who you are and what you do, like what do you tell yourself? I'm not talking about your title that people say, but in your
Yeah.
head, like, what are you?
I'm a loan officer.
You're a loan officer?
Yep. I
That's
mean,
that's actually a really interesting answer, because I would think that you would have said something, because to me, you're like this, you're like and I hate the I word, but you're a marketing business person, entrepreneur, influencer. And I say that I don't mean because of the limelight. It's just that when I think
yeah.
about loan officers, what do loan officers do? They take applications and they close loans.
Yeah.
But you've really built a big business though.
I guess my job role today versus like my first year in the business, I'd say in my first year, I'd probably call myself not a slave. That's a bad word, but you're like grinding, your
Yeah.
first few years in the business. That's real. Like you don't have an assistant at that point to help answer calls or handwrite your thank you cards. Like you're grinding. But if you can get through that grind and know that you can get, one assistant on your team, the grind gets easier. So today, majority of my time is content creation. It's looking at what are most of our clients asking? What questions did they ask this week? How am I getting that information from my LOAs? And that is what creates the content for next week, so to speak. So yeah, majority of my time today is boring stuff like analyzing data, numbers, where are we getting our business from, who we haven't gotten our business from, who I need to re-engage with, what questions are people asking? Like tomorrow we're hosting a how to keep your current home and buy another home, because 63% of people, and I know I'm going down a tangent, but 63% of people have a 4% or less interest rate right now in their home. So a lot of people kind of have that question of they're flirting with the idea of keeping it because it's a great rate. And we know that we might not ever see that again, but we're trying to stay ahead of the curve and answer those questions before everybody else on this call does the same thing. As we want to be that resource. It's like, no, it's super easy to buy another home. I've personally done it. You only hear about the horror stories of like tenants tearing the house apart, but that doesn't have to be your story. And so we're trying to like do things like that because we are feeling with the research I do and the studying that that's on a lot of people's brains right now is maybe we should keep this house and buy another. And what does that
Yeah.
look like?
All right. So I think we're going to jump back and forth on a lot of tangents. I've hung out with Denise before, and that's what we do because we did that on our podcast. So I'm going to kind of go with her. I'm going to go with you, Denise. I'm going to go present, and then I'm going to go past at the same time. Right. So a lot of people, if you're familiar with this, I talk a lot about marketing versus sales, right? Talk about marketing versus sales. Let me just create one more document. Remember in modern, so this is like old times over here. And this is like new times over here. We have top producers over here. We have low producers over here. So typically we've been taught to sell and just sell, 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 sell. So a low producer is just kind of sits around, right? And a top producer is very disciplined and they're just constantly making calls all day long. Okay. So what you end up having is you have this person not doing a lot and this person doing better. But the problem with this is that your business is going to go up and down according to your discipline, how many calls you make, and you're constantly going from sale to sale to sale to sale. And what if you're on vacation and you don't make a sale? You don't create any business. But over here in this world, we have the marketing world. This is the world that Denise sits in. So the lower producers, what they have is they have a lot of tools. They kind of don't do anything with it. They can send this, they can send that, but they don't create a lot of activity. And the top producers over here, they're getting big, broad reach, big reach. Oh, let me get my colors right. They get really, really big reach and then consistent content. Okay. And that's what Denise is doing. It's consistent content. So when we start at the top of the funnel, we've got, I'm going to divide this into 4, is that this is the content area. This is where it starts because you're going to the broadest audience, right? Now, I'm going to kind of start in the present and then we'll sort of work our way backwards. Denise, what do you think your reach is when you put out a piece of content? What do you think your reach is in terms of either your followers, your database? I mean, do you have an idea? Are you reaching 5,000 people, 10,000 people? Do you have a gauge on that?
In my CRM, I have like 6,600 real estate agents.
6,600 real estate agents. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that's not like buying lists and stuff. That is people I've met or listing agents, or if I hosted an event, or none of the stuff I do is purchased, by the way. Like even my Instagram followers, I haven't purchased any of those over the last 2 years. Deborah. So for those of you on this call that doesn't realize I'm a twin, I have a twin sister. Her name is Deborah. She runs a marketing company. Believe it or not, people still don't realize that and they think we're the same person. But
he just wears the glasses. That's how they distinguish between the two. She's the nerd. Deborah's the bird.
And she's growing her hair out though. So it's making it really confusing for people. But now on Instagram, I think I'm just under 12,000 followers. On YouTube, I have not anything super fancy. I think I have over 3,000 subscribers, and then my past clients, gosh, I don't even know how many past clients. When I separate my clients in my CRM as past clients, which are people who I've done business with, current clients, which could be people I pre-qualified 3 years ago, but they're still current. They're in a pre-qual or pre-approved status.
I mean, your borrow database is north of 10,000.
Yeah.
Right.
But even clients who when they don't choose us and we move them to canceled and we mark them as either lost to a builder or lost to a client, though that's something that we started utilizing last year because, these builders who are not going to keep up with their clients that are offering these crazy incentives. Okay, we're not going to write your loan, but my post-closing concierge team would be happy to follow up with you every single month, provide an equity report. And when rates get low, you're going to get a ton of robocalls. You're going to get a ton of mail junk that is probably spam and not a good deal, but we'll help you monitor when it makes sense to rewrite that loan. So we have campaigns like that we do because we all know that those lenders aren't going to follow up.
Yeah. And the thing is that remember this, 20% of your database is going to do a loan yearly because the average person gets a new loan every 5 years. So 20% of your database is yearly. And so a lot of times people, they'll lose a loan, they'll lose it to competition. Maybe they get rate shopped or something like that. So it's typical for a loan officer to get butt hurt and they're like, I'm not going to track that person. Most people CRMs are like just past clients or just people that are like nice to them. But if you just are patient, that person's going to eventually going to get another loan and they'll even come back to you, especially the rate shoppers, because the rate shoppers will always rate shop everybody. So you have another chance in the next 4 to 5 years to get their business again. And so it's really all the old leads, the dead leads, the cold leads that you really want to stay in contact with. And so we're talking about a database up here of like north of 30,000. And here's what's interesting. So I think a salesperson would say, wow, that's like a lot of work, you know what I mean? And I talk about the laziness of salespeople because what salespeople want to do is they want leads created for them. And then when we talk about lead generation, they're lazy to go get leads. Okay. I'm going to have to mute people. They're lazy to go get leads and they don't want to do the marketing activities, the lead generation activities. And my analogy is that if you went to an event and there were 2 top producing realtors there, what kind of pressure, Denise, do you have to close one of the two top producing realtors? It's pretty high, right?
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
if you went to an event where there were 200 top producing realtors, there's not as much pressure, right? Because you have a lot more opportunity. So with good marketing, the pressure of sales goes down. And so a salesperson thinks, okay, well, how do I go to more of those events?
Right.
Marketing person thinks, how do I create those events so I can get 200 people there, right? And so for those of you that are looking at this and you could possibly be intimidated and you're saying, well, look at those big numbers. I don't have those big numbers. Well, a marketing person would ask themselves a different question. How can I get those big numbers? How can I create databases? How can I create reach so that I can reach out to thousands of people? Okay. Now, down here, obviously you have your one-to-one interaction. What kind of other, and again, we're gonna go broad a little bit and then we're gonna kind of jump around. What types of events or activities do you do with the subsets of real estate agents or buyers? Do you do open houses? Do you do masterminds? Do you do client events? Do you things like that? What's all the in-between stuff? Because you're not the type of person that says, hey, look, I got these 30,000 people and I'm just pounding the phone every single day asking for business and looking for appointments, right?
Yeah. No, and I would even say that sales versus marketing is the way that my brain looks at it is I don't want to chase, I want to attract. And so
Right.
I think with sales, like you're chasing, you're having to pound the phones and with marketing, if you can get good at it, and nobody gets good at it right away, it's something you have to do over and over, by the way. It's not like I got to this overnight. You start to have it attracting towards you. And so you have realtors to start reaching out to you, which sounds maybe crazy to you today, but it does actually happen.
Mhm.
And so what it looks like now, I would say for the last 2 years, let's just call it post-COVID because COVID was weird. I do about every 6 to 8 weeks, I alternate between hosting in-person masterminds or in-person events and then hosting webinar type events. My masterminds that are in person that get me in the flesh. I am an introvert. I actually don't like to be around humans. I'd much rather be behind a camera, but they still need and want that connection time with me. And so I try to do that at least 4 times a year with them. And I had a coach like 5 years ago tell me, Denise, like, what do you do for fun with them? It's all business. Cause I am kind of programmed more all business. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, I don't really want to have fun with I don't really love a whole lot of my real estate agent. So it's not every once in a
Like, what
while,
about fun?
yeah, I'll sprinkle in like on Mother's Day, I kind of have a coin like petty and mimosas, and we'll go get a pedicure. And it might be a group of 10 or 12 of us. And they're going to be, the ones that send me more business, even though anybody that's here that's going to violate RESPA. I'm not violating RESPA. It's just, I do some fun things like that. I think it was last year we did a Top Gun, like we rented out a movie theater, but I try to get in front of the masses. What I'll do is I'll send out an invite like, hey, I'm hosting this class about how to buy a second home. I'm hosting it in Plano. There's 30 seats available. First come, first serve. We are also hosting it via Zoom. And that way I can record it, chop it up, share it. My realtors that might live out of state or live an hour away, they're not going to drive, but they still want the content. And so it literally took me kind of a year to realize they don't have to be separate. They don't have to be like a webinar and a in-person event. I still do them separate, but even my in-person things, I'm like, why am I recording this? Like I could just be recording it and still doing it in person 4 times a year. So I just started having a recorder even when we do them in person, but I don't do open houses really anymore.
The problem with open houses is that you're kind of putting yourself in a one-to-one connection, right? Versus like a
Yeah.
one-to-many connection. And I talk a lot about what's the difference between one-to-one. I'm sorry, what's the difference between one-to-one or let's say one-to-many versus many-to-one or many-to-many? Wait, what is that? Like, why did you start with the word many? Because if you recorded it with a little red record button, what happens is that you now create content to push back up here. Because how many masterminds are you doing? Like Rob does mastermind. Rob actually had a mastermind this morning before this training Tuesday. He just did his 10th mastermind. So he has 10 hours of content now that he's just pushing back out to his database, just content. That's why I tell everybody, record everything. Same with your one-to-one. You can push everything back this way. And typically what happens is what Denise is showing us is that a lot of times we're in this world where, we're trying to do one-to-one sales. And if it's not working, we're like, oh, well, I heard masterminds work. So we kind of go this way and we try masterminds and we're like, well, how am I going to fill the mastermind? So then we go this way, but that's swimming upstream
Yeah.
You got to realize like the flow actually comes this way downstream. And that's why when Denise says her most highest activity right now is content, right? Content creation, because you're going to hit the masses. Now, there's a third bucket here, and I'm curious if you have a third bucket. Some people's third buckets are Facebook groups, because Facebook groups are more curated subsections of the top bucket.
Yeah.
Where there's and the difference is with Facebook groups, there's interaction. But I know you have kind of like a nerd university. Do you ever do anything with that in terms of like your buyers or your real estate agents that are not really like on the mastermind level, but like in this group or anything? Like, have you done that yet in terms of your
So
pages?
my Nerd Academy is for
Mhm.
loan officers, but I have a Nerd Club alum. And so
Okay.
my Nerd Club alum is specifically for people who have done business with us. This is a horrible way to describe it, but I'm like, if we've slept together, then we've done business together, you can be part of that Nerd Club alum. And so they get special.
I have that with my clients too. We call them alumni.
I'm like, if we just dated, you don't get in there. But if we've slept together, then you're a
Right.
part of my Nerd Club alum. And
Yeah.
so they get monthly finance tips from me. And then once a month, they're in a Facebook group. And then once a month, I will bring on like a CPA or a financial advisor
Yeah.
or a real estate attorney. And so, it's all just marketing. I created.
How big is that? How big is that club alum for you? I mean, this is like your past clients, right?
Yeah. I
In
mean,
the
we have
thousands.
over 8,600.
Okay, so 8,600. So you see how guys here that there's a funnel flow. And I didn't, by the way, I didn't practice any of this with her. I just know that Denise has this, right? But there's a funnel flow. When you start up to the top, there's 30,000 people, but you squeeze them down to the alum, then you squeeze them down. Your events, I mean, you'll run probably anywhere between 10 to 50, even to 100 people, depending if they're live.
Yeah.
10 to 100 people.
Yeah. Like our one tomorrow, we have, I think, 120 who have registered for our How to Buy a Second Home and Keep Your Current One. And
Right.
it's, and we get a lot of people that are like, I can't make that. Are you going to record it? And of course we record it out and we keep it in like a replay room. But some things are open to the public and some things you can only get if you're a Nerd Club alum.
Right.
And that's same with realtor partners and clients. And so I've created like, it's like Harley Davidson. People are so obsessed with Harley Davidson that they will literally tattoo the logo on their flesh. And I'm like, the day that I have a client tattoo nerd glasses, like not me, but like an actual human is so passionate about the brand that they would go as far as like these motorcycle groups and they drive down to Austin and they, but it's their thing and it's their community. And so I'm like, how can I make that sexy in the mortgage business? I don't necessarily think Nerd Club alum is something that's sexy, but it makes them feel like they're part of a community. And that's what people want right now. So,
But ultimately what you're doing is you're still squeezing down. And I want everybody to see that, like, how much harder is business when you start at the sales level and you're going one-to-one, and then you're always trying to ask yourself, okay, well, that's not working. And so I got to go up, I got to go up, I got to go up. But how different is it, everybody, when you look at it from the big picture and you realize it's just one big funnel? I was on a call yesterday with Stan, and Stan had, and I'm just going to kind of illustrate to you on a separate page here. Stan had, so, like, this is Stan, and Stan had all these things that he was doing, all these events and all these little marketing things. And in Stan's mind, he's just doing all this stuff as individual things. And what I did with Stan is I said, Stan, no, there's a funnel, and your things, just like, where are they on the funnel? Because everything's squeezing this way. Everything's squeezing this way. Does that make sense? So if you ever feel like you have too many things to do because you're doing this, the question is like, for all of these things, how many people? This is a 1 person, if this is a 5 person, if this is a 50 person, if this is a 100 person, the higher the number, the higher up it is on the funnel, and you're just squeezing that down. If you look at Denise's business, like I said, this was just from what I know about her. It's like the perfect funnel. She's starting at 30,000 people. She's got an alum of 86,000 people. Then every 6 to 8 weeks, she's meeting between 10 and 100 people, which is then creating follow-up for your one-to-ones, and you're creating your business. Okay. So just in the chat really quickly, I would just like to see here. I want everybody, don't be embarrassed. I don't care if the number is 50. I don't care if the number is 5,000, but what is your current biggest reach possible? If you had to add up all your followers on social, if you had to add your database, if you had to add all your lost leads, you had everybody on your phone, what's your total reach right now? Let's see what the numbers is. Like, Adam, I'm looking at you. What's your total reach? Tracy is 28,000. right? I mean, listen, Tracy's a veteran, right? So Tracy's going to do anywhere between 180 in a bad market, 200 in a bad market. She'll do 400 in a good market. But man, that's a squeezed funnel, Tracy. And Tracy's one of my coaches. But everybody else is at least in the thousands, and that's good. That's a good place to be. That's a really good place to be. Because think about it this way: Denise is at 30,000 doing 600 units. What is that, like a 20%? Was that like 20%? What's my math? Is that 2% or is that 20%? Somebody
I
do
don't
math,
know.
right?
We can't do math as fast.
What,
as
what's
we
what's that
Come on.
math? 600 into 30,000. I think that's 2%, right? So for a lot of you, I mean, 2%, let's say micro T's, you're 6,500. 2% is 120, bro. Like that's 120 units. You just got to
That's the
squeeze
goal,
the funnel.
2020.
See what I'm saying? But that's 120 units. So if you looked at last year and you said, well, how come I didn't do 120 units? Like, well, a 2% squeeze on 6,500. That's what you got to look at. All right. So now we're going to go back in time, because this is, I think, is the most interesting stuff. So every time somebody interviews a top producer like Denise, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like this big thing. And by the way, you probably have, I mean, if you're doing 600 units, that's about 50 units a month. You got to have at least 8+ people on your team, right?
I have 4 LOAs. I just
Yes.
answered Greg's question about that. 2
4 LOAs.
processors, 4 LOAs, 2 admins. Admins do
Process.
phone calls and setups and stuff.
That's about 8, because it's 2, 4, and 2, right? Rule of thumb is for every 5 fundings, it's 1 person roughly. So I figured it'd be somewhere between 8 and 10, and that's about right. But whenever people interview top producers, it's like, oh my gosh, it's this big intimidating thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little timeline therapy, and let's figure out how Denise started. I think that's always interesting. So what year did you start in the business, Denise?
Technically, I dabbled in 07, and
Okay.
I walked in one day after like 6 months of being on the job, and they said, we don't have any money to fund the loans. And so I was like, screw this. I'm going to go be a financial advisor at JP Morgan Chase. And then I got back into the business and got licensed technically in 2012.
Okay, so let's start at 2012. Okay, 2012. So if we had to create a highlight reel, right? Like a 2-minute trailer highlight reel of Denise's career. And let's just think about the highlights first. What do you think were some really significant events from 2012? Like what was like the next significant event where something big happened? You either hired your first person, or you had a big break with a realtor, or you figured something out in marketing. What did that look like?
So in 2012, when I left Chase, I'd never done a purchase loan ever because,
Okay.
I was working at the bank and you just refied everybody.
Yep.
And then my first year, I did 7 million.
First year you did 7 million. Okay.
Yeah. And then I realized I really didn't like asking the same questions over and over, getting it to the 3, because, we didn't have point of sales at that time. So, asking people where they work and how long they worked there and running DU and figuring out purchase prices. I didn't love that. And so in my mind, when there's pain and not pleasure, I try to find a way to get rid of it. And so I thought to myself, how could I avoid having to have these conversations all the time and having to answer the same BS conversations all the time? And so I think I heard Linda Davidson at one point talk about video and how she recorded a client experience. When a client came into the office, she had recorded, like what we see in American Airlines when you get on the airplane, this is the exits and all that stuff. And I was like,
got a video.
Yeah, I feel like I could create a video for that. And so then I went to town on creating videos. In fact, if you go to my YouTube channel and you click on like the oldest video, I think it was 2013. It's horrific. It looks like the Blair Witch Project because Deborah's recording me. But I started recording what I call one-timing videos of what is an escrow account? How does a lender calculate debt to income ratio? How to read a HUD statement because HUD was still there. How to fill out an online application. What do underwriters look at with income? All that, like what's in your mortgage payment. And I just realized I don't want to keep answering those questions. So I'm going to create a video. And then if I create a video, I might as well just put it on YouTube because everyone knows YouTube. And I'll just post them up there. So that if someone texts me on the weekend and says, hey, I have a client and they want to apply, how do they apply? Can you give me a call? I could say, I'm so sorry. I'm at my son's game. I didn't have a son then, but I'm at my son's game and can't talk to you right now, but here's a video on how. If this doesn't answer it, give me a call and I can call you back later. And so those one-timing videos, what it did, because I didn't have an assistant at the time, but in my mind, I was trying to solve the problem of how can I create more time for myself so I can close more deals? Because if I close more deals, then I can hire a human to do even more stuff that I don't want to do. And so my solution at that time was, in order to get more time back and get rid of the stuff I don't like, is create some videos. And then it was designing, the year after that was how could I design those videos in my process? But I freed up enough time to close more deals, to make more money, to hire my first assistant.
So I said, Deborah, Denise figured out really early time management principle that if you've ever failed at time management because you said, I'm going to create the perfect schedule, I'm going to create the perfect time block, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, you realize that that doesn't save you any more time. All that does is that just disciplines you to use the same amount of time, and you're going to do it, but you're going to realize you're going to run out of time. So what she did was she created leverage points, because time is like the last resource that you should use. If you create a process, technology, people, or throw money at something, you can eliminate your time. That's really like the best time management, is eliminating time. And that's what Denise did, is that she created videos, because you figured all these little monotonous things. How many conversations do you have with your borrowers about like impounds, about what APR is, about how, what affects rates? You got a video for everything. So now you can focus most of your time on business development, right?
Right.
Okay. So then what did that look like? So you figured out, okay, I started doing all this stuff. So where did your head start going in terms of, okay, now that I got this time, this is what I'm going to do? Did you at that point, did you become obsessed with video? Did you get into sales mode? I mean, what was that?
Oh, I mean, what it did is I got obsessed with video because I realized I have an art of explaining things. I'm not a super intelligent person. So if I can explain something like that a 5-year-old can understand, then most people can understand what I'm saying. And that's usually the feedback I get from some of my videos, even on social media, is like the way that you phrase maybe a difficult concept is so basic. That's just because my mind works super basic. But then in 2015, I realized like every agent that I was meeting with, their biggest pain point was communication from their loan officer. And I was like, damn. So the only thing preventing me from being a badass loan officer is just to like over communicate. So at that point, because I'm cheap and I'm frugal, I was still working off of a CRM, which was an Excel spreadsheet. And I would have like an Excel spreadsheet, and every tab would be my client. And I would create this like itinerary. And it was very manual of updating people, certain days of the week. And I was like, okay, if the number one thing is communication, what I really need to do is define a business process in the mortgage business that's as good as Chick-fil-A at 12 p.m. on Saturday.
Not
Because
Sunday, but Saturday.
Saturday. Yeah, because Chick-fil-A is one of the most profitable fast food restaurants. And guess what? They're not open 7 days a week like everybody else.
Right.
And we have a Chick-fil-A and a McDonald's like literally a hop, skip, and a jump away. And like at 12 p.m., the line is wrapped around the building at Chick-fil-A. Meanwhile, McDonald's has like 4 cars in it. And it's mind blowing to me that they have a process, even if it's wrapped around the building, they can still get you in and out really quick. But here's the thing about Chick-fil-A is they're fast. Their customer service is good. They have a defined process, and it literally does not matter what Chick-fil-A you go to, whether you're in California or Georgia or Texas, it tastes the same. And so I'm like, in 2015, that's when the light bulb went off the head. How can my communication, how can my product, my service, quality, all that stuff be as good as Chick-fil-A, but in the mortgage business?
So what's really interesting is that when we think about somebody's progress in the mortgage industry, I think a lot of people have this impression like, okay, well, one day she started making some calls, and then next year she started making more calls, and the next year she started making more calls. But this is a completely process-driven growth. It's process-driven growth because the key word here is scalability. Denise knows that she knows there's fundamentals of creating business. It's talking to somebody, creating a prospect, and trying to sell them. But you can only do that so much, right? So how many of you are kind of spinning your wheels because you're spending all of your time always doing that process instead of asking yourself, how do I save time? How do I streamline it? How do I make it more efficient? And we're talking about really in these first 3 years, the fundamentals of her scaling. Because I'm going to tell you this, without that, Denise would be a very still talented, accomplished sales originator, maybe hitting 200 units, maybe 100, 200 units, right? But it's the scaling of her business that allowed her to pull back and do this much business. And listen, I know a lot of humble people that say, well, I don't really need to do 600. That's bullshit. Because if you had the opportunity to do 600 units, you would.
Well,
right?
the thing is you don't want to do, it's like people associate your association with 600 is you must work your ass off. But the
Right.
reality is I worked my ass off way more and way harder my first 3 years than I do now. And so that's just a mindset shift. But the one thing I do want to say is I had a limited belief in 2015 that I think at that time I can't remember how much I was doing, but it was like right around when I was doing 30 or 40 million. I felt pretty good about myself. And I was like, there's no way that I could transition myself from always being the primary point of contact with my realtors. I mean, not for nothing, but I go by the mortgage nerd, and that's singular. And so it's like, how do I do that? Do I have mortgage nerds on my team? Are they going to feel like they're talking to an assistant who's not as nerdy as me? And I was just like, I had people in my marketplace that said it was possible, but to go from like the quarterback to the coach of the team to the owner of the team, I was like, there's no way you can do that in the mortgage space because realtors want to talk to me.
But that's a limiting belief. That's
It
an
was a
absolute
limiting,
limiting belief.
it was a limiting belief. And that's why I want to bring it up here because some people may be thinking that, and there's no way you can do 700 units and take every single incoming text message from an agent or a client and that's part of the scalability I don't think enough people talk about. And there was a transition period where the CRM, so to answer someone's question earlier, the first CRM I adopted was Whiteboard CRM. They're not even around anymore. The current one I use now is Be in Touch, which does not matter. Be in Touch is just the car. I designed the engine, every email, every text message. So don't go sign up for Be in Touch thinking you're going to get what I get because I hand wrote every email. But the message I'm wanting to send you is that the CRM that I did choose, I chose my team email address, Home Loans at the Mortgage Nerd, to be the primary email. And we have a text message number within the CRM. And so I had to retrain a lot of the agents that were already working with me that if you need something, you need to email Home Loans, the team email, or respond back to this text message. And there are still some to this day that I will, of course, respond to. But for the most part, I had to shift that habit where if a realtor sends me a text on my cell, the habit change that I do now is I take a screenshot and I send it to the team and I say, hey, team, can you respond to this text message from the system? Even though I'm fully capable of responding right then and there, I'm retraining them.
You got to
So
redirect.
you
And
got
you
to
know what?
redirect. And
Wait, somebody asked a question about, but I've had my same cell phone for 20 years. I'm going to tell you this right now. With today's behavior, nobody memorized your phone number. Just because you had a cell phone for the last 20 years, it goes straight into your phone number save. I bet you most of you can't tell me the 5 phone numbers of your 5 best friends. So my point is that you could have had the same business phone number for 20 years. And if you change the phone number and you basically send a message saying, hey, I changed my phone number, can you update your contact? People will be like, sure. They won't even care that you changed the area code. This is not like 1985, 1995, 2005, where you can remember, I don't even know I try to remember my kids' phone numbers. That's it. Just in case, but I don't memorize anybody else. And Daniel, in 2 weeks, 2 Tuesdays, Tyler and I are going to do all things CRM. What I've realized is that I can't ever pick the best CRM for everybody because there's different rules and regulations. People are at different companies, people have different budgets. But what I can tell you, and what we're going to talk about, the reason why we're going to call it all things CRM is we're going to talk about these are the things that you need in your CRM. So whether you go shopping and find the CRM that has those, or whether you say, I'm going to take this CRM and I'm going to customize it. And that's really what Denise is saying. It's like, it kind of doesn't matter. I picked a CRM and I put those things out. So you said right around then you're doing about 30-ish million.
So I just pulled it up. 2015 was 38 million for 155 families.
Okay. So 155 units. And for talking 3 years in the industry, I think for a top producer, that's about right. I want to say my second year, third year, I was about 150 units there too. But I think the key is like, and I learned from Tim Brahim, who was my mentor. He said, I never wanted to do the same thing twice.
Yeah.
I can create a process and automation or delegation so I don't have to do the same thing twice. And now you're really focusing on growing your business. Now your database at that time was still probably 2,000 people, maybe something, probably like a moderate, I would guess, right? And so for you to go from there to here, and I want to hear your timeline, but would you say that it wasn't necessarily, and I don't know the answer to this, like I said, this wasn't pre-scripted, but Would you say it wasn't something magical? It was just like the concept of compounding interest. It just keeps compounding as long as you get yourself out of the way, right?
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
was the next there from 2015, next couple of years? What was the next biggest thing for you, do you think?
So in 2015 to 2016, I changed companies. And so I ended up doing roughly the same from the data I had at the time, roughly about the same as I did in 2015. So I do want to be very transparent that it's not like I've never had a down year except for this last year. Every year we've grown just a little bit, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, it's like the best decade, so I guess it's not that cool. But in 2017, we did 203 units for 51 million. 2018, we did 223 for 57 million. But those years, I think the next move was my first hire was somebody completely opposite of me, who's not a visionary, not a marketer. It's almost like a processor that has a little bit more personality. And he would be running all my DU findings and doing
That
all the
was in
nerd stuff.
2018 that you did that, or 2017?
I think 2017 is when I added my second LOA, and
Okay,
she was,
so you had a significant, you had a key hire.
yeah,
Oh, I think that this is true for most teams, and Denise is a huge basketball like Kobe fan, so I love that. I always say that on the best origination teams, it's not like a team that looks like one person and there's a bunch of people. Usually there's kind of like a right hand person that you completely trust. Like if you had to walk
yeah.
away, you had to call one person and say, can you handle all this? Do you have a right hand person like?
Oh yeah, Eric.
Okay. So and that's a matter of trust. Everybody knows here, everybody knows who my right hand person is. It's Robert. Okay. And I think that's key because instead of creating this hierarchical thing, Denise has a right hand person that are basically bound at the hips. And was that your key hire in 2016, or did he come a little later?
No, 2016 is when I hired a female that could start acting like a second me. Like Eric
Okay.
never wanted to be the guy on the phone and do the initial phone calls or even sometimes handle that pre-purchase consult. But Amy had been working with me. We shared an office for basically a year, not really by design, but because we had no other space. So she could really overhear. I do think that that's important. She could overhear almost every conversation I was having. So even though she has a real Southern twang, when people would call in, they wouldn't even hear like, this is Amy. They just thought it was Denise, which was kind of perfect. And so that was the key shift from us being able to basically go from 150 units to 300 units was now I had another mini me that could do those initial phone calls. And I wasn't doing all that. And that was just the next leap. And then that's kind of a pod. You can just duplicate those
Yeah.
pods.
So I'm just going to put in the chat. I want everybody to write your key assistant. Okay. Is your key assistant local or remote? Are they local or remote? So my key right-hand person, when I originated, his name was Brooke and he was local. And I think that was key because he sat in my office for 18 months, was able to mimic every conversation that I had. Now, some of you are remote, so I'm going to address that. But that's huge because you said that, I mean, she was in your office or right next to you. She could overhear every conversation, right?
Yeah. And I
And
actually feel most of my people work from home nowadays, post COVID. And I do feel like we lose even my upfront admin who now answers all of our incoming phone calls. Her technique and I'm really big on like choice of words. I never say refinance to a client. I hate the word refinance. We say we can rewrite your loan for you with zero out of pocket. Rewrite is just a better word than refinance to people. There's negative association there. But she's missing some of the new lingo that we say. And when the market shifts, how we call a 2-1 buy down strategy, because no one knows what that is. So there's definitely value. It's going to be very hard, I think, to convince people to come into the office every single day. I'm not necessarily saying you need it, but I think if you have the option, if you're looking for that co-captain or that next layer, them really knowing how you think, act, speak is so important. And it's so hard to learn that remote.
yeah, so going back to a lot of this stuff in terms of the remote people, I'm working one of our clients right now, and she's also remote with her team. So what they're doing right now is they're just doing a lot of three-way conversations, a lot of Zoom conversations. So that's another thing about Zoom, everybody. The reason why you want to do a Zoom conversation with your client, because then you can have your LOA, you can have your assistant on the Zoom to listen. Because if you're doing everything phone, I mean, you could patch them in, but it's not interactive. And also what you're not doing is you're not branding that team member. If you have a Zoom and your team members are right away, they already say, hey, I'm working with the team. So when that person takes over, there's already familiarity with the handoff. Now, I want to look at this, and I think this is kind of enough to pause, but still fill in some of the pieces going back, because by the time 2018, 2019 comes, you're already a 300 unit producer. And for a lot of people, yeah, we can keep going to 2023, but the empire just keeps getting bigger. And obviously we're going to talk about social media, we're going to talk about reach and all that stuff. But let's kind of look into this zone a little bit. Okay, like what's happening still in this zone. Okay, so what we know is that you're saving time, which is great. What we know is that you've created processes so things are smooth. You're able to delegate, you're able to automate, you're able to do those things. And I think the question is still, even for some of our level 3 producers, we have Adam, we have Aubrey, we have Crystal, people like that. Okay, we got the team in place, we got some processes in place. But for you, Denise, during this time, we know what it is today, but what were some key marketing, money-making activities that you did then? We know what it is today. Mortgage Nerd is going to show up on my feed every single day. It's like I'm getting nerd education. But in this time, what was a lot of the critical in the building phases, either the sales or marketing activities that you did?
So here's what's crazy. I knew that I had to pump my database because I came from Chase Bank. So I didn't have real estate agents. And it was at that time, my mission was to add 5 new realtors to my database every single week. And that was person to person. I wouldn't recommend that today, but person to person. So I would do what was called open house crashing. I'd crash an open house and just say, oh my gosh, I was in the area. Just wanted to pop by, introduce myself. I live here, blah, blah, blah. And I would get that card and I'd put them in my database, because to this day, and this is something I've done since probably 2015, every Friday I send out an email to my real estate agents that is something of value. A lot of you guys are going to be like, really, Denise, you're going to tell us to email our clients. Here's the thing. My emails are so on point. It's not an apple pie recipe. It is like, here's how I helped this buyer save $700 a month when they thought they were going to have to wait a year to buy a home. Every real estate agent wants to open that video, even at the time, if it was just text, they want to know how I did that, because I'm showcasing how we're solving problems. In those Friday emails, I might include a social media graphic that they can use. It doesn't have my brand on it, but every Friday I'm giving them something that's super valuable that they want part of that. They want that email. And so I would go to these open houses, or I was still doing every 6 weeks, like clockwork. I would go to a title company and tell the title company, hey, I'm going to put on this master class of how, as a loan officer, I am generating business back to real estate agents through the form of introducing them to CPAs, financial advisors, divorce attorneys, because I look at that shit when they fill out an application. So I want you to invite all your realtors, because I didn't have any. I'll bring the content. There'll be a sign-in form. And then I get those agents, and I was like, well, that's a lot easier than doing 5 open house crashes every single week on my Sunday when I want to be watching the Cowboys win. Maybe I should just do more of these because my reach is bigger.
So you did more of those because your Cowboys weren't winning. Sorry. They won yesterday, so I can't talk.
They won yesterday. So guess what? In true Cowboy fashion, we're going to be really happy about our boys until they lose, and then we dog them out.
Small side tangent. Cowboys against the Niners. That's just an epic matchup. But let me just pause for a second. So the thing is that, see, everything that Denise is saying, she's thinking either like a process person or a marketing person. You notice that everything that's coming out of her mouth, she's not thinking like a salesperson. She's not talking about that one-on-one coffee that she had over and over and over again. She said even the purpose of creating a conversation down here was to add them here, because the funnel goes downstream.
Yeah.
Her mindset was to add 5 agents a week. I think a lot of people, their mindset is like, I'm going to meet with an agent and I'm going to try to close the agent. And what happens is when you try to close the agent, a few things happens. The first thing is, let's say you do close the agent, but then we run into problems like, how do I keep the conversation going? Do I just call them every once in a while and say, yo, what's up? Right? What if I don't get the agent? Do I just feel sorry for myself? Do I get sour? Effing agents. I hate agents. No. What she created was a mechanism of value. The mechanism of value starts here. You're delivering something weekly to them on Fridays. And by the way, she said Friday. I think it depends on your audience. Agents, it's perfect to deliver value on Fridays because they work on weekends. So if you ever, anybody out there is saying, so here's a goal, and everybody who's followed my funnel coaching, deliver something on Friday. Let me tell you how easy it is, because you're getting in your own head. You get 4 days to create one piece of content for Friday. You start on Monday. You get 4 days to do it. Overthink it Monday and Tuesday, produce it on Wednesday, revise it on Thursday, and send it out on Friday. It's not that hard if you can't get a piece of content out on Friday. And that's what you're doing. I mean, everything that I'm hearing you saying is database, 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 because there's a pull through on people's database. My mentor, Tim Brahim, always said, the loan officer with the most friends wins, which basically means the widest reach, the biggest database, the most interaction of value. And you're just doing this. And so now you're reaching out to your databases. So would you say that, how often are you having to like proactively go after a realtor and say, hey, I would like business, versus realtors reaching out to you and saying, Denise, I heard about this, or I remember you. I mean, like, what's the real story? Because we, you know what I mean?
Every loan officer is going to freaking shoot bullets at me when I answer this. But truth be told, I have not sniped. So I used to call it sniping, because I would try to snipe the whales, and I would drip on them, and I would send them stuff. And I haven't tried to proactively go after an agent in over 3 years. They DM me, they email me. And here's the thing, because of my social media presence, and I don't mean, I do highly produced videos, and I do super authentic with my iPhone pointing it at the screen type videos. The thing is that over time, it doesn't happen overnight. It might take 18 months. Like, plot twist, you have to show up on social for a really long time. But what will happen is you'll start to gain that know, like, and trust factor, which is kind of what sales is, but you're doing it, you're attracting it, because now I have people that say, hey, I've been following you on social for a while, and I've been getting your emails. How do I send a client to you? They don't even have to have coffee with me, because we've already established that they know, like, and trust me based on the stuff that I'm mass producing. And that's the key thing, is that factor is still there. They still want to know, like, and trust, but I've never even met them. One of my top 5 agents, Kai, I was kind of embarrassed. I went to an event in December. He was like, oh, hi, my name is Brian St. Clair. And I was like, holy shit, that's Brian St. Clair. He was in my top five agents last year. I have never met him once. So don't hate me. Listen, you can't hate me for that, because I have spent the last 10 years grinding. And here's the thing that I'll say to Kai's point is, it's not only that you have 4 days to put content together, be smarter than that. Pick 1 day a month and batch your content. So 1 hour, 1 month, I already batch my content and know what my Friday emails are going to be, or know what my social media posts are going to be. So the reality is I'm spending 12 hours a year for my stage type photos type content. Like, I already have my stage Super Bowl post ready to go. I already have my Valentine's stuff ready to go, because I spend 1 hour a month. So that's the whole thing, is it's like, how can we work smarter and not harder, and attract people and follow the funnel? Because I don't want to have those one-on-one conversations. I want my team to now have it. So that's been delegated to the team. My job's up here now.
Yeah. And for those of you that ever think that like you're the best loan officer in the world and nobody talks to you, I'm going to tell you right now, every loan officer in the room thinks that, and there can only be one. But also, there's a lot of assistants, there's a lot of production partners, there's a lot of LOAs, a lot of processors that are actually better at doing loans than most loan officers.
Dude, I don't
Your
want the
main
best.
job is to be a marketing person.
If I'm the best loan officer on my team, we have a problem. I am the
Right.
worst at this stage. Honestly, you don't want me to review self-employed. Now, can I? But they are far better at it than I am.
Yeah. One of the things that really intrigues me about your content, because I follow your content a lot, is that I think when everybody starts, people do basic content, right? There's always that first video. Did you know that you didn't have to put 20% down to buy a home? But remember too, I know a lot of times you're addressing consumers and buyers.
Yeah.
But understand too that realtors are also your audience, because they're also paying attention to you and they're listening to what the content is. And one of the things that intrigues me a lot about Denise is that she talks about a lot of complicated things. Like, I actually follow you a lot for how you follow the CPI index, inflation, and all these things. And it's a lot of your brand being the mortgage nerd. I think that people look at you and say, she talks about really difficult concepts and breaks it down, right? A lot of very complex topics, because realtors out there are going to gravitate toward an extremely smart loan officer that knows all the ins and outs of different complicated transactions, different situations, that can even answer the question, And you know, right now in a time where people are a little lost, they're frustrated. If you think volume has dropped for loan officers, volume has dropped dramatically for real estate agents. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of people will flock to you because you're always starting your week with, okay, guys, what are rates going to do? And I'm sure you have a big following just doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of that education came from like Barry and MBS Highway and things like that. So that's why you have to watch a lot of that stuff. Okay. So everybody else asked me MBS Highway, mortgage choice. I'm like, well, to me, MBS Highway is really first. Sorry, Dave. But
Both.
in terms of
Yeah.
the education of rates, okay.
I do
We need
both.
to get
Yeah.
and that information out. We haven't even talked about sales tools yet because we've got mortgage coach, we've got lender launchpad, we've got all these things. But I think what's more important is that if we do the marketing right, if we create the brand that's right, you will attract so much business that you could have, I mean, honestly, kind of like so sales.
Yeah.
But when you don't have enough business, you have to be so on point with sales, and it creates a ton of anxiety, especially when you don't convert. So, I mean, you've just been out there with one mindset: add to my database, add to my database, add to my database, because then I can market to my database,
Right.
squeeze down, attract, and then have people reach out to you, which
Yeah.
is happening on a regular basis.
Yeah. It's like Gary Vee's book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. It's like, I want to offer value, value, value. Even if you don't know, there's some LOAs on my team that are converting to LOs, and they're like, I don't know how to post a every week rate update. I'm like, just copy my video, just copy it. So those of you who don't follow me on social, go to @themortgage_nerd. My video today about mortgage rates was kind of a dig at real estate agents and how I've been seeing more and more of them post like the mortgage daily average interest rate. And I always cringe because I'm like, that's like me posting, oh, you want to know how much your whole house is worth? Let's go to Zillow and look at the value. Because that's not.
I actually listened to this morning, and it was a total dig on Zillow because they're trying to quote mortgage rates. I listened to this morning.
It is. And it's like, so anyways, that if anything, perception's reality. And it's at least telling people who may not know anything about me that I'm smart enough and I care enough to study the market. And they might not even know if their current loan officer studies the market or knows anything about the market. And for the last few years, we could get by with being a loan officer that was really great at speed, because that was the name of the game. It was speed. Now the name of the game is quality. And how are we educating our agents, and how are we equipping them to rebuttal really tough conversations? Like, you know what I mean?
We may need a part two and the reason why this is, and Denise is the only I think Denise is the only loan officer, and I'm the only coach that talks about this, is that we have a generational change. We have a generational change.
Don't even get us started on
Don't even get us
Right?
started. So the generational change is millennials and Gen Z now control most of the volume. And how are millennials and Gen Z wired? They're wired to go on their smartphones and research and see. And so they're going to pick the loan officer. They're not thinking about speed. They're thinking about like, which loan officer is the smartest, which one can provide me the information, which one has a perception of that. And that's what you've created with a lot of this. We're coming to the end. I hate this because it is now 12 Central. And
we'll come back. We'll do, you know what? I would love for everybody on the call to email you questions that they have that they took away from this, and we could do a part two. I would do that.
Yeah, let's do this. Okay. So first of all is that let's write this. What was your one big takeaway? Okay. Let's all share that. And by the way, this chat is always downloaded by Lindsay. So we're going to compile this. So first, everybody give me their one big takeaway. And while you're giving you one big takeaway, I'm going to ask Denise one more question. And this is why marketing and reach matters. Denise, how often? Okay, so 2022, we didn't see this, but in 2021, we did. In 2021 and 2020, it was a competitive multiple offer market.
Yeah.
And because of your expansion, because of your reach, I'm sure that there was a good majority of listing agents that knew your brand as the lender submitting the offer. So they trusted you to accept the offer, right? Versus like, I don't know who this lender is. And I've had this conversation with Keith, one of our coaches. It's like, you come into a new market, get all 10,000 agent names and just start marketing to them, because just the branding alone, they may not give you business, but you want every single listing agent to know who you are. And in Plano and in Dallas, I mean, you're just a big brand there, right?
Yeah.
A big brand. Okay. So I'm going to ask the last question is, what is a question for Denise that we can answer at a later date? Let's go ahead and put your question, and then I will go ahead and do it before I end the call, and then I will have Lindsay compile them. And so, so we'll go from there. But Denise, every time we talk, we go up and down rabbit holes, and you always kind of see what I do, and I scribble on iPads and I create timelines. But guys, if I were to take a theme from Denise, it's everything that I've been talking about. She is a marketing driven loan officer who says, how do I do as much marketing possible to the biggest reach possible and eliminate everything else by automating it and delegating it? Because I want to do one thing, and I want to do one thing well, is marketing. Because if I do enough marketing, the sales will come, and you don't even do the sales anymore, because the sales will come in, and now your sales team takes care of it. But even when you did, every loan officer here is good enough at the sale if you have enough business, if you have enough.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just competing too much for it. So
Right.
Denise, thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. And my message back to you guys is just think about in 2023 how you can be high touch and high tech, where you're still techie, but you're still intentional and thoughtful. And there is a way to marry the two. And keep doing what Kai says, because Kai might be one of the smartest. I don't tell people often, but you might be the OG nerd, because you study data like as much as I do. So
OG
super
nerd
appreciate
since 2001. Thank you everybody for another Training Tuesday. Thanks Denise. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.